According to psychologist Carey Floyd in his 2011 book titled Interpersonal Communication, he points out that interpersonal communication occurs between two people in the context of a relationship, which involves and helps negotiate and define the same relationship. Nowadays, interpersonal communication has evolved as more than only face-to-face interaction, but it is also present through the use of technology such as text, email, and social media, which, if used correctly, can be as powerful as face-to-face interactions to create and maintain meaningful relationships. Once we establish contact with another person, there are too many factors that predispose us into creating meaningful relationships. Today, in this video, we will be exploring many interpersonal communication theories with the purpose of understanding what happens during the different developmental stages of a relationship. The first theory is the social penetration theory. According to researchers Amanda Carpenter and Catherine Green in 2016 from Rutgers University, the social penetration theory is a type of affective relationship in which individuals move from superficial communication to more intimate communication through different levels of self-disclosure. Carpenter and Green explain how psychologists Irwin Altman and Dalmas Taylor in 1973 conceptualized the theory of social penetration to understand the development of relationships between individuals. There are four stages of the social penetration theory. The first stage is the orientation stage. In this stage is a part where individuals interact cautiously and with little information. Whenever you first meet someone, you make small talks and reveal non-intimate information about yourself. The second stage is the exploratory affective exchange stage, a stage in which individuals begin to share more information, being more friendly, and begin to dialogue with more information. Casual friendship starts at this stage. The third stage is the affective exchange. In this stage, spontaneous communication and use of personal details which expose a greater commitment towards the other. And the last stage is the fourth stage, which is called the stable exchange. In this stage, those who interact are understood very good between them, and communication can occur at a non-verbal level. People can predict how the other will act based on the information given. Altman and Taylor propose an onion model to describe the ways in which communication changes when relationships change through the different layers of intimacy. A person can be compared to an onion because it represents various aspects of a person's personality. The outer layer will become the superficial part of a person, and as you get to know the person better, you can remove more layers until you reach the core of the onion or the most vulnerable part of that personality.
The relational dialectics theory is a theory that states that each relationship one acquires in life forms a relational culture or sets up an understanding that the individuals in the relationship create. This culture evolves constantly, does not remain stagnant, and heavily relies on the influence of both partners. It is an analysis made in order to analyze interpersonal relationships. And according to Baxter and Norwood in 2015, this theory is also how meanings are constructed through the usage of verbal, nonverbal, oral, or written messages. This theory, however, was created by Leslie Baxter and Barbara Montgomery in 1988 and emphasizes three main relational dialectics in a relationship. The first of which is autonomy versus connectedness, which refers to autonomy, meaning remaining independent, and connectedness, meaning the state of affinity with the person or need towards maintaining closeness. The second of these is novelty versus predictability. Novelty is defined as a new or unfamiliar experience which individuals crave. Predictability is also something people need, for the familiarity is what keeps us in our comfort zone. The third of these is openness versus closedness. This basically describes how partners in a relationship need to disclose information and also feel the need to keep certain things hidden or private depending on the stage of their relationship. Leslie Baxter adopted 4 different methods that can be used to resolve these. The first of which is selection, which satisfies only one of the pair of needs, and the second of which is separation, which relies on solving the tension by managing in different areas of life. The third is neutralization, which is a type of compromise made in order to decrease the tension. And the last method is reframing, where both needs are modified in order to seem identical.
Earlier, relationships develop their own relational culture, which is a set of understandings or meanings that the individuals in a relationship create. Each relational culture, therefore, has its own relational climate, which is the overall mood or feeling that people in the relationship have. These climates begin to transform in initial interactions, and patterns of behavior are quickly established afterwards. The relational climate can thus be one full of negativity or positivity. This is where confirming and disconfirming communication arises. Confirming communication results from a supportive and respectful way of interacting in a relationship that ultimately leaves the person feeling valued. This can be phrases such as "you're important" or "you matter," as stated by Cisna in 1976. Disconfirming communication is the opposite of this, for it describes a defensive climate filled with judgment and mistrust. Phrases such as "I don't like you" or "I don't care about you" are considered forms of disconfirming communication. The messages that we send in our daily communications sets the climates in our relationships, and how we say what we say affects whether we communicate in a healthy or destructive way. When the relationship climate becomes negative, defensive communication takes place. This is done in order to guard oneself from what we perceive as a personal attack. This type of communicative behavior arises from face-to-face threat, or, according to Wilkerson in 2017, even an online message. There are three different ways of reacting defensively when we perceive a threat. The first one is by attacking the critic, and this basically uses verbal language in order to elicit a hurtful response. The second one is distorting critical information. This behavior compromises a mechanism that makes the person seem superior or not at fault by stating untrue explanations, excuses, or even using one of their strengths to cover one of their weaknesses, as stated by Floyd in 2011. Lastly, one can avoid critical information. This behavior utilizes physical actions in order to dodge the critic, taking out their anger out on objects, people, and even things, and pretending not to care about the critical information being discussed. According to Ford in 2011, Jack Gibb came up with examples of defensive and supportive communications and stated that as a person becomes more defensive, they lose the ability to accurately perceive the messages or emotions of a sender, and that can be extremely problematic. Because interpersonal communication takes place virtually as well, tensions and conflict occur here too. In today's society, social media is used in order to communicate and start relationships with people, but just like face-to-face communication, if we don't find the accurate and appropriate ways to communicate with others, our relationships may dissolve. Ultimately, how we behave with our significant others sets the tone for how our relationship will operate. Even though relational cultures are constantly changing, they are influenced by the behavior and evolution of both partners. These cultures can give rise to how the relationship climate is perceived in a relationship, and the effectiveness of their interpersonal communication can dictate whether the climate becomes negative or positive. Therefore, it is essential to understand that how we communicate in a relationship shapes the outcome of how we act or perceive things.
In today's video, we talked about different communication strategies that are forms of interpersonal communication in different but similar ways. Each theory explains ways people create and maintain meaningful relationships. The social penetration theory emphasizes closeness based on self disclosure and explains the path of how individuals move from superficial to intimate communication. Relational dialect theory stresses how contradictions are present among individuals due to continuous tensions in their communication. And finally, relational climate describes how each relationship has an overall feeling or temperature that may evolve into a negative or positive climate. If the relational communication becomes negative, a person may perceive a threat, and then defensive communication takes place. Defensive communication can greatly harm relationships for the speaker and the receiver because they cannot comprehend accurately. They can't, comprehend the messages that are being sent, and ultimately we communicate with our peers, um, friends, family, and romantic partners. We want to be able to maintain those relationships and be able to construct a healthy climate that aids in nurturing and growing our relationship. It's important to understand that having good interpersonal communication skills enables us to work together effectively with others, even in professional, whether it's professional or a personal setting or personal situation, and that builds strong relationships that lead to better understanding among people. Lastly, to quote Georgiana Siminsku in 2016, she said, human connection is the essence of interpersonal communication, interpersonal connections, and thus holds a significant role in shaping, connecting, and beginning our daily relationships. Thank you.